The topic today is Satan's role in the end time. And this is going to be not just Satan's role in the end time. Really, we're going to be looking more at Satan's role, but it is a little different in the end time. And so understanding what Satan's role has always been is going to be important to understanding his role in the end time. So that's where we're going to start, is Satan's role generally. What makes Satan tick? And so we need to go right back to the beginning to see what it is that drives Satan and motivates Satan and causes him to do what he does and kind of who he is really. And the Bible doesn't say a whole lot about Satan, but it does say some things. And some of them are kind of stuck into prophecies and a little hard to pick out, but I'll help with that. So the one I want you to see first of all is Ezekiel, which talks about his creation. It says, "You had the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. On the day that you were created, your workmanship was prepared. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you." So what we see there, two things I want to really pick out intentionally here, is Satan is a created being. Okay, he is not godlike. He is not God stuff. He is a created being like all the other angels. And also, he was perfect. He was beautiful in ways that we don't understand. He was full of wisdom. He was perfect in all these things. And so he was a creation. He was created perfectly. But there was a time when unrighteousness was found in him. Okay. And so that unrighteousness is what changes him into the Satan that we know. So he didn't start out that way. He started out perfect and blameless and all these good things. And so what was this unrighteousness that caused his fall? Well, we pick that out from Isaiah. And it says, "But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." Okay? Pretty obvious stuff there, except that this is a dual prophecy. And so you might contend with me and say, well, this is actually just about this king of Babylon person. Well, it is about that, but it's a dual prophecy. And in a dual prophecy, things can be used two ways. And there's a video that I have on that. I'll add a link here that will help you to understand that if you're not clear on what a dual prophecy is. And so the first part of this prophecy is, yes, it's about the king of Babylon who has these same kind of aspirations. And this is really part of a long taunt by the Israelites against this king of Babylon. But the second part of this is that this is a reference to Satan as well, because Satan has these common features with the king of Babylon. And you can really see that when you see some of the odd wording here. What is the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north? And I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. Who does that? And so those kind of references are really much more about a heavenly being rather than a physical man being. And so we can see there the hint right away that this is not just talking about the king of Babylon, but it's also talking about Satan. And so it's a dual prophecy, as I said, and it is dual in the sense that these two, the king of Babylon and Satan, have some things in common. So the king of Babylon suffers from the same problems that Satan has. Okay, so these three are: they thought too highly of themselves, you might say arrogance. They tried to take what they could not have, and they will suffer the same fate. So those are the three things that these verses and the others in that section of Isaiah say about the common things that these two have together. But for our purposes, that we just are interested in what Satan is, and so we know Satan thought too highly of himself. He tried to take what he couldn't have, and he's going to suffer the same fate, and not a good fate. So continuing on with this, what was this unrighteousness that caused his fall? We've seen that he had this ego thing going on, and so his failing was that he desired to be equal to or greater than God, and that was his aspiration, is he wanted to be more than he was supposed to have been. He wanted to claim the title of God. He wanted to be that, and so notice what he says in those verses. Now I know the verses are on the other slide, and you can't see them right now. But what he says in those verses, so to himself in this prophecy, he says, "I will make myself like the Most High." Okay. And now what does Satan say to Eve? Well, he says, "You will be like God." Okay, from Genesis 3:5. And so Satan is using the same bait on Eve that got him hooked, that same desire to be equal to or greater than God. And that's a common trait that Satan does. Satan tries to make us think that we can be better than somebody, better than God. We can be God ourselves. That's always the bait that he puts on the hook for us. And it comes in different forms, but that's the ultimate thing behind it, is that I will be king over me. I will be the one who chooses my destiny. And so, and also in this Eve and Satan connection, we see another one. And Satan infers to Eve that God has been keeping Eve down. Now that's interesting, because it's almost certain that Satan felt the same way. Satan felt that God had been keeping him down when Satan felt that he should be greater than God. Okay, so Eve and Satan both had the same weakness, and Satan used these same arguments on Eve because he knew she had that same weakness. So, what is Satan's goal in all of this from the beginning and to the end? And that will really lead us more to where we're headed with what is his role in the end time. And so we've seen already his goal is to be greater than God. And so, how is he going to do this tactically? What's he going to do as his methods of achieving this? And so, he's going to destroy what God has created. And so, the one thing you can do to be greater than somebody is to destroy everything they've done. And that's one of the things that Satan attempts to do. And we know that that's in our lives. And the other one is to make God a liar. And I want to really emphasize the importance of this, making God into a liar. How do you do that? We'll talk about that a little bit more. How do you actually make God into a liar? But if you can make God into a liar, then Satan can say, well, God's a liar, I'm a liar, no difference. I'm better or equal to God. And so that's what motivates him there. That's how he's driven. And so this making God a liar is an important thing. And I'll go just a little further with that, is that one of the ways to make God a liar is to take something that God said in the Bible, for example, and make that untrue. And prophecy is one of those main things where that can be done, is when God gives a prophecy, he is extending out a risk about himself. He is saying that this is going to happen, and if you can do something to make it not happen, then God becomes a liar. And if God is a liar, boy, everything is just over. The whole universe is gone and done. And so that's an important thing, more important than just those few words might indicate. And so understanding some more about Satan and what drives him. Some people think that Satan wants people to worship him, but if you look around the Bible, you just never find that. That's not in his motivation at all. He doesn't have this super plan for mankind that he thinks is a better plan than God's plan, and he's trying to really implement this plan for mankind because he cares about mankind and he really wants them to do well. Well, that's just not him at all. He despises mankind, and you can see that in all of his actions. He really wants all humans to be dead in their sins, or at least as many as possible. And if he can't get all of them, then the more the better. That's fine. And so he doesn't care what you worship. He doesn't care if it's him. He doesn't care if you worship nature. He doesn't care what you worship at all. The only thing that he cares about is that you don't worship God. That's the only thing that matters. So anything but God is fine. And so that's an important difference between God and him. God says only me. Satan says anything else. Okay? And so Satan really is hate. Where God is love, Satan is hate. And he hates everything that God has done and all of that stuff, and he's trying to destroy all of that stuff. And so he's like the boy who kicks over the sandcastles on the beach because he would never be able to make one or never has any desire to make one, maybe even couldn't make one if he wanted to make one. And so he's like that little delinquent child who just destroys all these things that people have created because he can't do it himself. So making God a liar, and I touched on this earlier, but we're going to actually see some verses here that relate to that idea. And so in the verse below, what's happening is God is speaking to Moses about having considered destroying the Israelites. Okay, so there was a time when the Israelites sinned against God so bad that he said that he actually considered, what if I just destroy them? Maybe that would be better. And so Deuteronomy 32:26-27 talk about this. And it says, this is God speaking. I would have said, I will cut them into pieces, I will remove the memory of them from men. Had I not feared the provocation by the enemy, that their adversaries would misjudge, that they would say, our hand is triumphant, and the Lord has not done all this. Okay, it's a long, long sentence, big verses, but it has a really important point to it. God says he would have prophesied complete destruction for Israel and removed all memory of them from mankind as though they never existed. Now that's an interesting thing. Not only would he destroy Israel, he would have ripped the memory of Israel from mankind. And so there would have been no memory of them or any of the promises that were made to them all of that would have been ripped away, and God can do that. And he said he came close to that. He considered that as a possibility. But the thing that stopped him from doing that was knowing that their adversaries, and he talks about the enemy. So he's talking about Satan, would say God had not done everything that Israel through Israel that God had promised. God made a whole bunch of promises to Israel, and now Israel's gone, so they're not going to happen. God lied, and so this is this God being a liar idea because of the promises He's made through prophecy aren't fulfilled. And so Satan's plan is to show God to be a liar through unfulfilled prophecies. And so if Satan can do something to cause a prophecy to be unfulfilled, that gives him this ability to make God into a liar. And that seems to be Satan's real motivation in this, the thing that he can achieve if he can do this. So if Satan can get into the position where he is the person who makes a decision whether we go this way or that way, then he may have the opportunity in that decision to do something that God didn't prophesy or cause something that God prophesied to not come true. So that's a big point to understand about the motivation behind what Satan is doing and why he continues on. You might think that Satan is hopeless. How can he hope to do anything with God? Well, this seems to be his hope, that he can somehow make God into a liar. And Satan's also a destroyer. We talked about those two aspects of him, and there are other aspects too. I haven't included the full list here because these are kind of the two big ones. And so Satan is a destroyer. And there's a verse about that from John 10:10, and it says, "But a thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have whatever is abundant." So this goes back to this idea that God actually has our interests in focus, and he wants us to do well, and he has come for that purpose. But the thief has no such purpose. He doesn't have a better life in mind. He doesn't say, well, what the people of earth really need me as their leader because I would give them a much better life. No, he just wants to kill, destroy, steal, wreck, make a mess out of everything. And so that's a very big difference in their motivations and what makes them tick. And so what is actually the most silly thing about this is that there are people who are Satan worshipers. And when you read this and understand what this verse is saying, it makes it doubly foolish. They worship a false god, yes, but this false god hates their very existence and wants to destroy them. He has no interest in their worship, and so their worship is not only wasted, they're worshiping someone who hates their existence. So we understand Satan a whole lot better now and what motivates him. And so what's different in the end time? Well, not a lot. He really has the same focus he's always had. He wants to destroy people and he wants to make God into a liar. But things are a little different in the end time. The destroying people continues on. He wants to destroy people by leading them away from God. But in the end times, he has a bigger scale effort going on. And this is being allowed by God. And so this big scale effort is going to involve people bringing down fire from heaven and doing wondrous things that humans have never done, never been seen before. And this big scale effort is targeted at, just as Jesus said, pulling away even the elect from God. So this will be such a convincing exercise in the end times, unlike anything we've seen before. So a bigger scale attempt to destroy people by leading them away from God is what happens in the end time. And making God's prophecies a lie also continue. But in the end time, there's a whole lot more prophecies that need to be fulfilled. So many prophecies are focused on these last 7 years or last 20 years that need to be fulfilled. And so that's where the opportunity comes in for Satan to cause some prophecy not to be fulfilled. And so that's where his hopes are really focused, where all these prophecies are coming to their fulfillment. So, so Satan's role is really the same in the end time, but it's a bigger scale thing. And so we need to look at also what Satan's downside is in this. He cannot coordinate people to achieve a goal, and that's so important to understand. And because he isn't a goal-oriented person, it isn't like he's offering a better solution to people. He just offers people any other sin. Choose your sin, any sin, just don't follow God. And so he's really all about chaos, and he hates everything and destroys everything. And so he's entirely about chaos. But when you're like that, it's almost impossible to coordinate people to achieve a focused goal. And so people choose to sin in whatever the way they choose. If they have 3 different sins to choose from, they'll choose the one they like the best. And that's just the way people are. And with that kind of an attitude in the people you're trying to control to get them to coordinate to achieve a goal, you can't do that because everybody is off chasing his own desires. And so you can easily imagine Satan saying, "Get off that woman and go fight against God." Well, what are you going to choose as a person? Which is more fun as a sin? Well, kind of an obvious choice. And so that's Satan's downside. He because he is essentially chaos, he can't coordinate people well. But things will change in the end time. Through these beasts of Revelation, as they're called, he will have a kingdom of men and people who are his followers, at least to some degree. But he doesn't have much time, and that comes up in a couple of verses that Satan only has a little bit of time to do this work. And also we know that the Holy Spirit will not be interfering with him, interfering from his perspective, of course. And so he's going to have this big opportunity in the very last of the end time to achieve whatever he can achieve without any interference. And the only limitation he has is he doesn't have a whole lot of time. So will that be enough? And that's his big hope, is that in this time he can get to this point where he can make God into a liar. And if he doesn't, well, the best he's done is he's destroyed all sorts of people by having them follow after the beasts and get involved in all of that mark of the beast stuff. So that's important to understand about Satan's motivation in all things, and especially in the end time.